My name is Jenna, and at 33, I thought I had seen it all until my sister's birthday party turned my world upside down. I walked into the party expecting nothing more than cake and casual chatter. Instead, I was blindsided with public humiliation. Right in front of 30 guests, my father stood up, microphone in hand, and demanded that I hand over the keys to my $3 million penthouse, the home I had worked tirelessly to earn as a birthday gift for my unemployed sister. "It's only fair," he said, his voice dripping with false concern. The room went dead silent, every pair of eyes fixed on me. My heart pounded as I refused. That's when he snapped. His hand struck across my face, the slap so hard that one of my earrings flew across the floor. Gasps echoed through the room. Someone had already raised their phone to record the scene. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I calmly picked up my earring, gave my sister a cold smile, and walked out. In the hallway, I pulled out my phone and pressed a button. 30 minutes later, a woman stormed into the party. "You have 5 minutes," or she said, her voice like steel. The air grew heavy and everyone exchanged panicked glances, unsure of what would happen next. What came after? You wouldn't believe it. Before I share the rest of my story, tell me, what time is it right now and what city are you watching from? Drop your answer in the comments. I'd love to know where this story is reaching you. That evening, I stepped into my parents' Lux home in Atlanta for Tarara's 35th birthday party. The place screamed wealth, marble floors, floor-to-ceiling windows, a skyline view that could make anyone jealous. My father had gone all out, hiring a private chef and a string quartet with crystal chandeliers casting light over the catered spread. I'd chipped into $300 for vintage wine and another $500 for the chef. Not a word of thanks. Instead, my mother breezed past me, fussing over the dessert table like I was invisible. As guests arrived, I scanned the room. My older sister, the guest of honor, floated in, wearing a designer dress, her laughter loud and carefree. My parents beamed, calling her the star of the night despite her being 35 and jobless for years. "She's just finding her path," my mother said to Aunt Nancy, who nodded like it was gospel. Meanwhile, I stood there, the 32-year-old CTO of a tech startup, my penthouse worth $2 million, and felt like a stranger. Dad pulled Tara into a hug, praising her charm, her grace, qualities I apparently lacked because I chose a career over a husband. The comparison started early. "If only you were more like your sister," Mom whispered when I offered to help with the guest list. Less ambition, more warmth. It stung, but I swallowed it. Aunt Nancy chimed in, her voice sharp. "All that tech stuff, does it make you happy, Jenna? Or just rich?" Uncle George laughed, sipping my wine, and said, "She's too busy for a family." Even Cousin Tyler, barely 30, smirked. "What's the point of a fancy job if you're alone?" The room buzzed with their judgment, each comment a jab at my choices. I tried to blend in, making small talk with neighbors and family friends. I smiled at their stories, nodded at their compliments for Tarara's free spirit, but the air felt heavy, like I was on trial for daring to succeed. My parents didn't acknowledge my role in the party's budget, didn't mention my promotion last month, didn't care that I'd built a life from scratch. Tara, meanwhile, soaked up the praise, her fiancé, Ethan, by her side, both of them basking in the spotlight. I caught her eye once, hoping for a flicker of gratitude. She looked away. "You're welcome for the wine," I said under my breath, knowing she wouldn't hear. I moved to the bar, pouring myself a glass of the wine I'd paid for. A family friend, Mrs. Larson, approached her, tone ping. "You must be so proud of your sister," she said. "She's got such a bright future." I forced a smile, my fingers tight around the glass, proud of what Tara hadn't worked a day in years, living off my parents' handouts while I climbed corporate ladders. Yet here she was, the golden child, while I was the outcast for choosing a different path. My chest tightened, but I pushed the hurt down, refusing to let them see me crack. As the quartet played on, Dad raised a glass, toasting Tarara's vibrant spirit. The guests clapped their cheers, echoing off the penthouse walls. I stood in the corner, my stomach twisting. I wanted to belong, to feel like part of this family. So, I stayed pasting on a smile, shaking hands, laughing at bad jokes. But deep down, I knew this wasn't my place. The way they looked at me like I was too much, yet not enough, made that clear. I took a deep breath, straightened my shoulders, and decided to stick it out for now. As the birthday cake was cut, my father stood up with a microphone. The room quieted, the string quartet pausing mid-note. Dad's smile was wide, almost theatrical, as he raised his glass. "Tonight we celebrate my daughter's 35th birthday," he said, his voice booming through the penthouse. "And I have an announcement. Jenna, our generous daughter, is gifting her penthouse to Tara to help her start anew." The words hit like a punch. 30 guests turned to me, their eyes expectant, some already clapping. My stomach churned. My penthouse $2 million earned through years of late nights and coding marathons was being offered up like a party favor. Tara, my older sister, gasped, pressing a hand to her chest. "Oh, Dad, really?" she said, her voice dripping with surprise. But I caught the flicker in her eyes, the way her lips twitched upward before the gasp. She knew this wasn't spontaneous. It was planned. I stood frozen, my wine glass cold in my hand as the room waited for my response. Dad kept talking, his tone patronizing. "Tara's been struggling jobless for a while now. It's only right for family to step up, right, Jenna?" The guests nodded, murmuring approval, their faces a mix of pity for Tarara and expectation for me. My mother joined in, her voice, soft but pointed. "Jenna, you've done so well for yourself. Sharing with your sister is the least you can do." Aunt Nancy, seated nearby, leaned forward. "It's a beautiful gesture," she said, her smile tight. "Don't be selfish, dear." Uncle George nodded, his voice gruff. "Family first, Jenna. You don't need that big place." All alone, the pressure was suffocating, their words piling on like weights. I glanced at Tara's fiancé, Ethan, who avoided my eyes, sipping his drink. The room felt hung in the air, raw and unapologetic. Tara's face crumpled, but I saw the calculation behind her teary eyes. She wasn't hurt. She was angry. I'd called her bluff. Mom stepped forward, her voice rising. "Jenna, how can you say that? Your sister needs help." Aunt Nancy gasped, clutching her necklace. "That's so cold," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Uncle George shook his head, muttering, "Ungrateful." The guests began to whisper, their voices a low hum of shock and disapproval. A woman I barely knew, Mrs. Carter, leaned toward her husband, saying, "She's always been too independent." Another guest, a family friend, added, "Poor Tara stuck with a sister like that." The judgment was palpable, each word a needle pricking my resolve. I kept my chin up, refusing to crumble. "I've supported this family," I said, my voice steady, but louder now. "I paid for half this party, wine, chef, everything. But my home, that's not up for grabs." The room grew quieter, the whispers sharpening. Dad's face reined, his grip on the microphone tightening. Tara sniffled, dabbing her eyes. But I wasn't fooled. She'd known this was coming, had probably rehearsed that tearful look. Mom's eyes darted between us, her expression a mix of panic and anger. "Jenna, you're embarrassing us," she hissed, but I didn't back down. I'd spent years proving myself, building a life they refused to respect. This was my line in the sand. The tension crackled, the guests shifting uncomfortably in their seats. A few pulled out their phones, their fingers hovering over screens, ready to capture whatever came next. I felt their eyes, their judgment, but also a strange sense of freedom. For the first time that night, I wasn't trying to fit in. I was standing up for myself, and it felt right, but the air was electric, charged with the weight of what I'd just done. Dad stepped closer, his jaw tight, and I braced myself for what was coming. The room went quiet as I stood my ground. My father's face twisted, his eyes narrowing to slits. "You're defying me," he barked, stepping closer, the microphone still clutched in his hand. Before I could respond, his hand swung fast and heavy, striking my cheek with a sharp crack. The pain seared through me, my head snapping to the side. My pearl earring flew off, skittering across the floor, glinting under the chandelier's light. Gasps erupted from the 30 guests, their murmurs replaced by stunned silence. I touched my cheek, the heat spreading under my fingers, but I didn't flinch. A young man, one of Tarara's fiancé's friends, fumbled with his phone, the red dot of a live stream blinking on his screen. "This is unreal," he muttered, angling the camera toward me. The other guests stared, some frozen, others whispering furiously. Tara's eyes widened, her hand covering her mouth, but I saw no tears, just a flicker of satisfaction. Mom stepped forward, her voice trembling. "Jenna apologized to your father," she demanded, as if I'd been the one to strike. I ignored her, my gaze locked on the earring now resting near a table leg. I bent down my knees steady and picked up the pearl, its smooth surface cool against my palm. Standing, I faced Tara, who stood beside Dad, her expression a mix of feigned shock and smugness. "Happy birthday, Tara," I said, my voice low but clear, each word deliberate. I slipped the earring into my pocket and turned toward the door. The guests parted their whispers, trailing me like a shadow. "She's walking out," one said. After that, another hissed. I didn't look back. The weight of their judgment couldn't touch me anymore. In the hallway, the penthouse's heavy door clicked shut behind me, muffling the chaos inside. My cheeks still throbbed, but my heart was steady. I pulled out my phone and dialed my best friend, Kayla Morgan. She answered on the first ring. "Jenna, you okay?" She asked, her voice sharp with worry. I leaned against the wall, the marble cold through my dress. Dad just slapped me. I said, my tone flat, but my hands shaking. He demanded I give Tara my penthouse. I said no. And My voice caught the sting of betrayal sharper than the slap. Kayla's breath hitched. He did what she snapped. In front of everyone, I nodded, though she couldn't see me, and recounted the scene. The public demand, Tara's fake tears, Mom's accusations, the guest stares. Kayla listened, her silence heavy with anger. "You don't deserve this," she said finally. "You've carried that family for years, and this is how they repay you." I closed my eyes, her words anchoring me. She paused, then added, "You need to call Margaret. Your grandmother will shut this down." I opened my eyes, a spark of resolve igniting. Kayla was right. Grandma Margaret, my grandmother, had always seen through my family's games. At 80, she held the family's financial strings, her sharp mind unyielding. "Do it," Jenna urged. "She'll back you." I scrolled through my contacts, my thumb hovering over Margaret's name. The hallway was silent, the distant hum of the party barely audible. I pressed the call button, my heart pounding but certain. My fingers trembled, but I felt a strength I hadn't known before. The line rang once, twice, then clicked. Jenna Grandma's voice was steady, expectant. I took a breath, ready to tell her everything. 30 minutes later, the apartment door swung open. Grandma Margaret strode in her silver cane, tapping the floor with commanding rhythm. At 80, she still carried herself like a queen, her sharp eyes cutting across the room. The guests froze, whispers dying instantly. I stood at the back, my cheek still burning, watching as her presence swallowed the noise into silence. "Daniel," she said, her voice low but edged with steel. "Explain why you dared to lay a hand on my granddaughter." My father's face drained of color, the microphone nearly slipping from his grip. The room held its breath. Margaret didn't wait for an answer. She raised her cane, pointing toward the floor. "You have 5 minutes to find the earring. If not, I'll handle this myself." A jolt rippled through the guests. They exchanged uneasy glances. Tara dropped to her knees, scrambling across the floor, her designer dress dragging. My mother clutched my father's arm, eyes wide with panic. "Mother, please," she stammered. But Margaret lifted her hand, silencing her. Aunt Nancy and Uncle George stood rigid, their earlier smugness gone. I watched, my heart steady yet heavy, as Margaret turned to address the crowd. "Jenna is the only one I trust," she declared, her voice carrying through the room. "She built her life with her own hands. No excuses, no handouts, unlike some of you." Her eyes speared my father, then my mother, then Tara, who froze mid-search, her face twisting. "Daniel, you run a company but can't run your family fairly. Susan, you coddled Tara into uselessness. And Tara," her voice dropped, not with kindness, "you've taken enough from your sister." Gasps erupted, phones lifted, capturing every word. Margaret stepped forward, her cane tapping rhythmically. "I've made my decision," she announced, her gaze brushing mine. "I am rewriting my will. Everything, my estate, my investments, my properties, will go to Jenna." Chaos broke loose. My mother let out a strangled cry, hands flying to her mouth. "You can't!" she screamed, her voice cracking. Tara collapsed into a chair, sobbing uncontrollably, her tears no longer calculated, but desperate. My father stood rigid jaw clenched tight while Aunt Nancy whispered, "This is—" My mother's social circle dwindled, her charity events now sparsely attended. I felt no joy in their ruin, only a quiet acceptance. Their choices had led them here, not mine. I'd severed all ties with them. No calls, no texts, no reconciliation. The night I'd shut the door on my parents' apology was the last I'd spoken to them. Their betrayal demanding my home sighting with Tarara, the sting of my father's hand, had drawn a line I wouldn't cross again. My phone, once flooded with their messages, now stayed silent. I'd blocked their numbers, my resolve unshaken. The family I'd known was gone, replaced by a clarity I hadn't expected. Kayla had become my rock. We met weekly, her laughter filling my home as we planned trips or debated tech trends. My colleagues, too, had stepped up, inviting me to dinners and brainstorming sessions, their respect genuine. One evening, my teammate Sarah had raised a glass, saying, "To Jenna, who proves hard work pays off." I'd smiled, the warmth of their support wrapping around me like a shield. These were my people now, the ones who saw my worth without strings attached. Grandma Margaret remained my fiercest ally. She'd finalized the transfer of her estate properties, investments, everything to me. Over lunch at her favorite cafe, she'd handed me the legal papers, her eyes gleaming. "You're the only one I trust," she said, her voice firm. "You've got my spirit, Jenna." I'd hugged her, my throat tight, knowing her faith in me was worth more than any fortune. She called often, sharing stories of her youth, her wisdom grounding me as I navigated my new role. Looking out at the skyline, I thought about the lessons carved into me. Personal boundaries were sacred, a line no one, not even family, could cross without consequence. I'd learned to guard my space, my achievements, my heart. True family wasn't defined by blood, but by respect, by those who lifted you up instead of tearing you down. Kayla's loyalty, my colleagues' camaraderie, Margaret's trust. These were the bonds that mattered. I'd spent years seeking approval from people who never valued me. Now I valued myself. I turned from the window, my award glinting on the shelf. The Penthouse, once a battleground, was now my sanctuary. I'd made it mine, not just with my name on the deed, but with the life I'd built. The past 3 months had shown me who I could be: strong, independent, unapologetic. I picked up my phone, texting Kayla about our next meetup. As I hit send, a calm settled over me, the silence drama was behind me. My future, bright and unshackled, stretched ahead.